Gasket Mount keyboards skyrocketed in popularity during 2021, and now in 2022, Epomaker has released their own take on the mounting style, the Epomaker Lite. This keyboard uses a slightly different style of gasket mounting called shallow gasket mount. We're going to look at what it is, how it's different to traditional gasket mounting, and whether it's a breath of fresh air or just a gimmick. For transparency, Epomaker did send this out for review, and I am an affiliate with them, but it doesn't affect this review in any way, and they didn't get to see any part of this video before it went live. There are 5 colorways with this keyboard: black and white with an ABS case, pudding keycaps with a transparent case, and Earl Grey and Theory with an aluminum case. And I got the Theory, which has a white aluminum case and gray keycaps with yellow accents. There are a lot of differences between the different versions, so this review will only be talking about the aluminum versions, which are currently on Kickstarter for $120. The keyboard comes wrapped in plastic, and also included is a manual, a USB-C cable, 9 extra keycaps. I'll get into why that is later on. There are also extra novelty keycaps, a keycap and switch puller, and some extra hardware in case you need to replace some parts. I will say that because the Kickstarter hasn't ended yet, I think the copy I got was an early review unit, and that's very important to keep in mind for later. This is my first time using a keyboard with an aluminum case, and the first thing I noticed was the weight. This keyboard is very heavy, weighing at 850 grams. And is by far the heaviest keyboard I own. That's to be expected since all my other boards are plastic. The case itself is very nice. The corners and sides are rounded with a flat edge on top and an inner bevel in silver, which I think looks really nice. This is made from CNC'd aluminum and is polished and sandblasted, which gives the case a slightly coarse texture. I would have liked to see this case a couple millimeters higher in order to hide the switches, since they are still visible from every angle. There are plastic flip down feet if you want to increase the angle, but there is a lot of side to side wobble with those, and I personally prefer the default angle. There are 4 large rubber feet in each corner and a left side recessed USB-C port, and any cable can be used since there's a lot of clearance available. My keyboard came with a polycarbonate plate, but I believe the default plate is FR4 and the polycarbonate plate will be an extra alongside a steel plate depending on your preferences. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to disassemble my board in order to show you all the components because I had issue with 2 of the screws. The first was stripped and wasn't able to come out, and the other was so tightly installed that I wasn't able to unscrew it at all. But what you should know is that this keyboard comes with case foam and a silicone dampener in between the plate and PCB, but more on that later. The PCB has the same layout as a GK61XS, which means that there are sockets for a split spacebar, but because the silicone dampener and plate don't have cutouts for these, you're limited to just a full spacebar. This keyboard is hot swappable with support for 5-pin switches. They do have north-facing sockets, but that isn't an issue here, as the keycaps aren't cherry profile and have no interference with the switches. The main selling point of the Epomaker Lite is their patented shallow gasket mount, and they say the structural stability and rigid connections are on par with traditional keyboards, yet the gasket design provides a completely unique tactile sensation. I assume this means that it has the same bottom out feel as a gasket mount keyboard with the rigidity of a tray mount keyboard. It uses the silicone dampening sheet in between the plate and PCB, and all of the screws have O-rings on top of the screw as well as one inside of the silicone sheet. So it's less of a gasket mount and more of an integrated O-ring mounted keyboard. There's also a thin silicone pad under each switch to further dampen the sound. This keyboard can connect with either wired or Bluetooth 5.1 with a 4000 mAh battery, which is becoming a very common feature amongst these GK style keyboards. There isn't a physical switch to change between Bluetooth and wired, so you need to use function and space to turn Bluetooth on, and function Z, X, or C to pair with the computer, and now the keyboard is in Bluetooth mode. I had this issue with my keyboard in Bluetooth mode where there would be times where a key would just stick and continuously output a character, which made writing the script for this video really frustrating, and I hope it was limited to just my copy. There's also a huge delay in between when the keys are pressed and when they appear on the screen, and I think it's because that there isn't a plastic section of the case that would better allow the connection to pass through, and the fact that the keyboard stays on even when unplugged in wired mode is really annoying. Overall, the connectivity aspect of this keyboard is one of the weakest parts of the board, and I recommend looking elsewhere if you're looking for a Bluetooth keyboard. Like I mentioned before, this keyboard comes with Epomaker's Theory keycaps, which are MDA profile. I've never tried this profile before, but I really like it. The keycaps are fairly short, similar to cherry profile, but the surface area is really wide, similar to XDA, and the keycaps aren't uniform row to row. which makes navigating through the keyboard really easy. I would say that these keyboards are a cross between Cherry Profile and XDA Profile, and I'm honestly a huge fan. These are PBT die-sub keycaps and are sold separately for only $30, which I think is a really good deal for these. The Earl Grey keycaps are Cherry Profile, so you may run into switch interference depending on the switches that you choose. The Epomaker Lite comes with your choice of either Gateron Pro switches or Epomaker's own chocolate mechanical switches. I got the chocolate silver, which is a fairly light switch with a bottom out force of 45 grams, but it doesn't feel that light because these are factory lubed very heavily to the point where some switches feel sluggish and over lubed. The reason that 9 extra chocolate switches were included, even though there are only 7 types of switches, is that the keys on the modifiers were different, rose browns in my case. But if you want to change the keys on the mods to the same switches as the rest of the board, they do include 5 of your selected switches in the box. Here's how the keyboard sounds completely stock. This keyboard actually sounds really good stock. The stabs could use some more lube, but there isn't a hint of ping in this keyboard, which really surprised me. I think it's a combination of the case and plate dampening, and the pre-lube switches having no spring noise made for a very pleasant sounding keyboard. The typing feel is also really nice. I prefer a softer bottom out, and this keyboard definitely accomplishes that, and I think that the silicone under each switch helps out with that. I'd say the typing feels similar to the KBD67 Lite, but is softer on bottom out, which I definitely prefer. It's definitely towards the clacky side, but still has a nice thunk on bottom out. It's a really nice sounding keyboard, but I was planning on doing some mods to the case and relube the stabs, but I wasn't able to, since again, I wasn't able to disassemble the case. I was able to remove all of the smaller stabs, but the spacebar was held in place by the silicone dampener, so I didn't end up relubing any of the stabs. Overall, this keyboard is a really good option for those who want a 60% pre-built keyboard. I hope that the issues that I had with the screws were limited to just my copy, and although I'm pretty disappointed that I wasn't able to mod this keyboard, in its stock form it has switches that you don't need to lube, solid performing keycaps for typing and gaming, all in an aluminum case that gives the keyboard a great sound and feel. The Bluetooth connectivity is honestly terrible, and the lack of a toggle switch makes it really annoying to use. It also really isn't a gasket mount keyboard at all. If they were to call it something like an O-ring mount or an implemented O-ring mount keyboard, I would have been fine with it since it matches up with what it offers, but calling it a shallow gasket mount is almost misleading to consumers, especially since they won't really know what the difference is unless they do a lot of research. Either way, as long as you know what this keyboard is and isn't, it's still a pretty good keyboard, and I think it's going to stay on my desk for a while, since I really enjoy the sound and feel of this aluminum case. At the time of this video, you can currently find the keyboard on Kickstarter for only $120, and you'll want to act quickly, since most Epomaker keyboards are more expensive once the Kickstarter has ended. I'll leave links to everything in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. We just hit 1,000 subscribers, and I want to say thank you guys so much for all the support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.